Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're happy and well. I live in Australia, and while we don't have much in the way of Disney themed things, boy do we have theme parks. In 2022, I know, it's a while ago, it takes me a while to edit these things, I went to Movie World in the Gold Coast, in Queensland. I went on 2 separate days, on 2 separate occasions, but I thought I'd just kind of smush them together in one video. To start with, I should say, I don't really go to theme parks all that much, so I'm very easily impressed. So, some history about Movie World to begin with. Warner Brothers Movie World opened in 1991 and started off showing off how films were made. It's now evolved to include rides based on DC superheroes, Tweety Bird and Friends, and a few other movies. The first and only time that I had been to Movie World before was when I was quite little. Now, it seems worthwhile to me to mention the quality of footage that I got over these 2 days. I'm using a much smaller and less flashy camera so that if it gets damaged it doesn't matter. But it also means that the footage isn't fabulous quality. I think I kind of like that aesthetic for this kind of video. The other part is that I don't really like being perceived and I don't really want to bother anyone, so I kind of carry my camera around at sort of chest height. I know everyone's an influencer these days, but I just would prefer to be as little invasive as I can be. There are other reasons too. Firstly, my pain tolerance wouldn't allow me to hold a camera like this, but also from when I was young, my parents always told me that if you're going to film an experience, you should really, be looking so that you remember it more than just the footage. So that's basically what I did. So that's why a lot of the footage is a little bit wonky, is because I was looking at what I was filming, but not through the camera, if that makes sense. So when you first enter the park, right at ticket collection, you enter an enormous gate that has the Movie World sign at the top. Once inside, there's a big fountain with a golden statue of Bugs Bunny in it. Tiny confession, I had to ask the people I was with who the Looney Tunes characters were. I'm sure Looney Tunes was around on TV when I was a kid, but I never saw any of it, so I don't really know who any of them are. Anyway, as you turn the corner from the water fountain, you come to the main street. I cannot explain how excited I was about these building fronts. They were clearly based on ye olde film era time, perhaps the 1920s? There was a cinema called Roxy, showing a 4D film, and the rest of the shop fronts for merchandise from various movies. There are other interesting set-like areas around the park with little nods to franchises. There was a 1920s style car parked on the side of the road in Main Street. In the Batman area there was a Poison Ivy set piece, and probably my favourite pun I've ever seen, Sherwood Florist. There was a shop that had Harry Potter memorabilia, Batman memorabilia. When I was there a little bit later it had Wizard of Oz memorabilia. I think by the time that I post this video it has a whole Wizard of Oz section, but I don't actually know for sure. And also, of course, a lot of Looney Tunes merchandise. One shop was completely dedicated to real collectors memorabilia. So one example was that you could get a single piece of film from a famous movie like Breakfast at Tiffany's with a signed authenticity certificate. I didn't film in the shops because firstly, I forgot, but also there were lots of families and children and I didn't want to have too much of that in my footage. I didn't want children or many adult strangers in my footage, but I figured that people that work there, both as face characters and as workers, probably have some sort of waiver that says they're alright being photoed and filmed, so hopefully that's okay. Our first port of call was the Wild West Flume Ride. I am a fan of a good flume ride, and I've had fond memories of them in my childhood. So I insisted we go on it. The ride in water in the middle of winter. I do not always think these things through. One thing that I think gets forgotten when you're reminiscing or fantasizing about going to a theme park is how long the lines are. As a disabled adult, I really wish that they had just installed some benches just around the place in the line. It wouldn't have messed with the aesthetic at all. Friends and influencers that I watch that have been to Disneyland rave about how amazing the rides are, how they're almost more amazing than the rides themselves. I think Movie World tried to capture that vibe a little bit, but I'm not sure it's as well done as it would be in Disneyland. The Flume Ride in particular is based on the Wild West, obviously, and presumably the Gold Rush, which is a historic moment in Australian history, so makes sense. So the set of the line wasn't really that interesting. The line was made to look like a wooden cattle run in a shed. They put a saddle and a lantern in the rafters. Oh, and a few big barrels that were labelled TNT. And the whole place smelled like a farm, so they got that right. Once we got to the front of the queue, you go through these saloon doors and clamber into the long boat. And the seats are always wet. You can then pull down the seatbelt into your lap, which is surprisingly difficult to pull down. I didn't film the ride, but someone else did. The footage is from 2018, but the ride looks exactly the same all these years later. And I think it's even the same as it was when I was really little. So your boat trundles through the water, through the Wild West. You see rusty farm equipment, mining equipment, and then up into a dark tunnel. This part of the ride always makes me anxious. I don't know if it's the noise or the darkness, or the fact that gravity or the machinery could change its mind at any moment and things could go very bad very quickly. But I always find that I hold my breath during these parts of the ride. There's a lot of warning signs around and a distressed voice over the loudspeaker as the doors shut behind you, putting you into darkness. The boat then turns as if you're going to go on, but surprise! You go backwards down the waterfall. Once the boat is turned the right way around, you go through more Wild West sets, with a few mining nods thrown in. There's rundown shacks, a graveyard, a questionably respectful campsite. And I wanted to talk about this sign really quickly. It's a very much blink and you miss it kind of joke. So it says Dodge City, as in get out of Dodge. And underneath that it says population 187. As you pass underneath it, you hear a gunshot, which scared the bejeebers out of me. And then the 187 falls away and shows 186. After the graveyard is a dilapidated western town with unintelligible voices, a water tank that deliberately spills water on the riders' heads, and the doors on the saloon move by themselves, which gives it a cool ghost town sort of vibe without being very spooky. Then you go back into a dark tunnel with lots of fake dynamite and dramatic music as you go up another very steep climb. Then you reach the top, the boat turns to reveal barn doors, which swing open, and you plummet down the waterfall. Getting super splashed at the bottom. After we left that ride, we went back through the Wild West to see other parts of the park. I really like the set of the Wild West, in case you hadn't guessed. I also like this big mural that part of the building goes into to make it look like a long stretch of street. Lots of rides were closed on the day that we went, so we didn't get to go on the famous Green Lantern ride, and the Superman roller coaster was a 2-hour wait, but we did manage to go on the Scooby-Doo coaster. The Scooby-Doo Spooky Coaster is based on the iconic 2002 Scooby-Doo movie, and it has a bunch of nods to the movie in the ride and in the line for the ride. Actually, this line was probably one of the best lines that I saw. Aside from being very dark, there were comical suits of armour, castle-esque features, and parts of the 2002 movie playing on a big screen. The name of the ride implies that it would be a roller coaster, so there should be flips, but it was really more flat and going around very sharp corners very quickly. You sit in a cart with a scary face on it and go through quick, jerky turns through the haunted castle. You see huge models of the scary dog monsters from the movie, general scary castle things, and some animatronics. Now listen, I'm not the bravest person around. To appeal to the millennials of my audience, I would not be sorted into Gryffindor. I've never been on this ride before, not even when I was little, especially not when I was little. So there's a part, like in many rides, that at the scariest moment they take a photo. Here's the one from my ride. At the back is a guy that we didn't know. There's my best friend, having the time of her life, by the way. Her face looks a little bit like this. And then there's me. In case you couldn't tell, I was terrified. Less terrifying things around the park are the shows and the characters. The characters would appear on Main Street at designated times to perform shows or to take photos. This is an aside, but I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but in Movie World in particular, they have very strict rules for the actors inside of the suits playing Tweety Bird or those characters. First of all, the people playing them have to be extremely fit and they get health checks fairly regularly. They're only allowed to be in the suit for 15 minutes at a time, and they're very strict about taking breaks. So that's one thing that I really like about Movie World, is how well they seem to take care of their actors. I learned all this, by the way, by speaking to someone who actually works in those suits, so straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. The other thing that they told me that I thought was obvious, but I'll say it anyway, is that adults really shouldn't acknowledge that there is a person inside of that suit, particularly if they know that the person inside the suit is being well taken care of, like they are in Movie World. It sort of ruins the magic for the surrounding children if an adult is trying to talk to the person inside the suit. If you're talking to Tweety Bird, you're talking to Tweety Bird. There are little ears everywhere. And if it's a character from a reputable company, they'll probably have someone escorting them around, making sure that the person in there is fine. So, don't worry about it. Back to the goings-on around the park. There were often face characters that people could take photos with, and for the most part, I think that they were cast really well. Dorothy was adorable. The Catwoman was a commanding presence. I was taller than Superman, but you can't have everything. There was also Batman and Robin, who went down Main Street on the Batmobile. And Marilyn Monroe was driven down Main Street while singing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. And the Scooby-Doo gang turned up in the Mystery Machine van as well. They did a little skit about needing to find a hamburger, included some children who were attending the park, and then they drove off. The shows in the street about the face characters were easy to follow, well microphoned, and very simple storylines, so that if you couldn't really see very clearly, you would still get a general gist of what was going on. The prime example of this was the Catwoman show. It started off with two men dressed as stereotypical police officers shooing people to the side of the street in Main Street. When Catwoman turned up, there was general sassing between the police officers and Catwoman.
You're overpaid. Hit the road.
Beat the heck out of them. She whipped a lot. They ran off. And she sauntered down the street. She was cast and trained very well. The other shows we saw in Main Street was a 1920s style performance with live vocals and dancing. And then there was the main event of the day, the Grand Parade down Main Street. All of the characters, both face and costume, were driven up and down the street in big floats and waved to all the people gathered at the sides of the road.
You're just like, what you do?
It's because I didn't wave.
Oh.
And that's the end of a normal Movie World day. But I was also invited to go to the White Christmas event at Movie World, so I want to talk about that as well. This event, while also being held at Movie World, is behind an extra ticket paywall. If you had just a normal ticket to spend the day at Movie World, you had to leave at a particular time when White Christmas would begin if you didn't have a White Christmas ticket. The park was decorated magically. Right at the beginning, the entrance sign was redecorated to have a white Christmas banner on it. And then through the main gate was a spectacular Christmas tree. The main street had a big Merry Christmas sign and icicle lights along the entire ceiling. There were also cute little festive touches around, added to all the buildings in the forms of wreaths, lights, Santa hats on vultures, and snow. A stage was set up at the other end of Main Street with snowflake projections on the building front at night. The most magical addition to this was the snow. It doesn't get cold enough to snow in winter in this part of Australia, and even so, at Christmas time, it's summer in the southern hemisphere, but they managed to incorporate the magic of snow in anyway. Every 15 minutes or so, snow would descend onto Main Street from an unseen place in the set. Why yes, that building does say taxidermy, but there were squeals of delight from both the children and the adults whenever the snow would start to fall. It was also really cute that both adults and children would try to catch it in their hands before it melted away. It wasn't real snow, so it wasn't cold, and it disappeared almost as soon as it touched any surface, but it sure was magical, and it made me smile every single time. Most of the White Christmas event was about the performances, and a lot of the events going on were definitely oriented to children. There was this little event where you could find Frosty's buttons. The children would dig through a bucket of snow, which I think was actually ping pong balls, and if they pulled out a button, showed it to an elf, they would win a prize, which from what I think I saw were like pillows in the shape of gingerbread man heads or snowman heads or Santa heads. There were also cookie decoration activities and other elf-related activities. There was also a photo with Frosty the Snowman Opportunity, who isn't around in the park for the rest of the year, and Mrs. Claus was around as well. Twice during the afternoon and evening was a sing and dance sort of show with 4 dancers and all the Looney Tunes characters. A little bit later, the Looney Tunes acted out A Christmas Story, narrated by an elf with a comically large storybook.
Time for Christmas. 3 cheers. Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray!
There were other little performances happening around the park as well. There were fairies taking photos under a tree, a little marching band, characters in various areas ready for photo opportunities, including a dedicated area to meet Santa. We also found 2 of the floats parked, and we really liked having a closer look at those. The big event of the night, of course, was the final parade. And that concluded White Christmas at Movie World, and also a normal day at Movie World. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!